After graduating from college, I landed a job. I was fortunate to find a good company during these times, and at that workplace, I met a woman I wanted to spend my life with. My life was going smoothly. However, those days unexpectedly changed. My name is Michael. I'm a salesman at a trading company that specializes in product sales. The company I work for is well known locally, and after graduating from college, I was employed there because of the work I had done during my university days. Michael, could you take care of this, too? Hey, isn't that your job? I've got plans today, so as a senior's request, I'll leave it to you. See you. With that, Sarah waved her hand and left. She was a woman in the sales department where I was assigned, often leaving work for me, the newcomer, and heading out. I didn't particularly mind since I was often given tasks like this even in university. Above all, I reminded myself that it was a time to gain experience and worked hard. In my job, I deal with specialized equipment and devices. Therefore, more expertise is required than in other sales jobs. Using the knowledge and experience I gained in university, I would visit clients who patronized our trading company, building a track record through direct sales. In the sales department, there was a senior female colleague whom I admired. Emily, you always look so cool. Cut the flattery and get back to work, Sarah. Emily, the only woman who could scold Sarah, who was popular among men in the department for being cute. She was 2 years my senior, not intimidated by handling specialized equipment in sales, and boasted the top sales performance among the female staff. Half a year after joining the company, I was assigned to work under her. Michael, let's go. Yes, ma'am. I assisted Emily, who mainly did outside sales, traveling from west to east on business trips. Initially, I thought Emily was a daunting woman. Michael, the document is wrong again. Sorry. Be careful, it's for the clients. Yes, ma'am. She was strict and didn't overlook mistakes. She was meticulous in her work, saying, Michael, we're going to run from here. Carry the luggage. When we get stuck in traffic and we're late for a meeting with a client. What? Run. Just hurry up. Yes, ma'am. Such were the scenarios that showed her dedication to work. But her knowledge, experience, passion for the products, and the smile she showed when facing clients were incredibly beautiful, and I followed her, admiring Emily. Michael, the presentation just now was good, wasn't it? Really. I thought it was my best work. Here, I'll treat you to coffee. Let's wrap up this deal in one go. Yes, ma'am. As I became more familiar with the job, understanding the client's preferences and values, and what was acceptable or not, Emily, who used to scold me, started praising me. The smile she showed at those times gradually transformed my admiration into a faint love. However, Emily, beautiful and helpful to everyone in her work, was extremely popular. Lucky you, Michael, getting to work directly under Emily. Everyone's got their eye on her, you know. My colleague, Brandon, who joined the company at the same time as me, kept repeating this during our lunch breaks. There were a few others in our batch, and all of them admired Emily. Being her direct subordinate, I felt completely out of place, a newbie like me. Then one day, "Are you free tonight?" As we reached the nearest station to our client's location after work, Emily asked me that. Today was Friday. Since our client was in the neighboring county to where our company was located, we were supposed to head straight home after our business meeting today. I was flustered by Emily's sudden invitation, but to her, I was just a subordinate. Telling myself she was just inviting me for a casual drink after work, I accepted her invitation. We had some light drinks and snacks at a bar near the station, then moved to a second location. That's when the incident happened. Michael, you've been doing really well lately. To my surprise, Emily got completely drunk. She had always seemed strong with alcohol at company drinking parties, but today, she was drinking at a fast pace and choosing stronger drinks. And by the time we reached the second bar, she was totally inebriated. I was looking for a place nearby where Emily could rest, but when she recovered a bit, she pointed to a place. It was a hotel. Emily, it's good to take a break there. But it's a hotel. Just go, Emily said in a tone I had never heard before. Overwhelmed by her aura, I followed her to the hotel she pointed to. From there, it was adult time. But no, as soon as Emily collapsed on the bed, she fell asleep, and I, too overwhelmed by the situation, relaxed and spent the night on the sofa. The next day, Emily and I left the hotel feeling awkward and went home, but that incident brought us closer. 3 months after that event, Emily and I started dating. From a professional admiration to a love I held, I was smitten with her. We spent a lot of time together at work, and when we went on business trips out of the county, we stayed in the same hotel and enjoyed visiting little tourist spots after work. 2 years after I joined a company, Emily and I got married. My colleagues, led by Brandon from the same year I joined, enviously congratulated us at our wedding, saying, "You're so lucky." But after we got married, Emily's attitude became noticeably different. Once we started living together, I realized she often treated me like a child. "Can't you even understand that? That's not good." She would complain, and even if I did the laundry or cleaned, she rarely thanked me but often criticized. Emily never slacked off on household chores. Everything she did was meticulous, and I, who was a bit messy in my personal life, felt suffocated in our married life. Then one day, my boss David, who had been on an overseas assignment, returned to my department. David, who went abroad just as I joined 2 years ago, had the impression of being capable but having a bad personality. He quickly made moves on Sarah, the cute girl in our department, and before we knew it, rumors were flying around that they were dating. But since he was good at his job, no one could complain even seeing him getting along with Sarah in the office. One day, while I was sorting through a mountain of documents as Emily was out on her own, David called me over. "You've married a tough woman, huh?" After some small talk at my desk, David said that to me. I was irritated, thinking he was insulting my wife, but his next words felt like a bucket of cold water over my head. "That woman has always had a bad history with men. Be careful, okay?" I couldn't believe it. I had thought Emily was popular but sincere. But David said, "You, being new, wouldn't know about her past," and told me she had caused trouble with men in the company before. After parting from David, I kept telling myself that couldn't be true. She couldn't be that kind of person. However, her attitude at home only accelerated my anxiety. I couldn't figure out what she really thought of me, always treating me like a child. Around that time, I was removed from being Emily's subordinate. It came out of nowhere, and when I asked David, my boss, who informed me about it, he said with a somewhat reluctant face, "Emily said it's difficult to work with you, so she asked to change her subordinate." Everything went dark before my eyes. True, at home I had been scolded, criticized, and talked down to by Emily numerous times, but at work, I thought I was supporting her without any mistakes. Indeed, Emily had never complained about my work, and she even praised me for my recent presentation at a business meeting. Why? That was the only question in my mind. David then told me, "You're in your second year now, so you need to grow and be able to work independently." So, I started working on my own for a while. When I got home that day, Emily, with a sullen look, said to me, "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Hearing those words, I felt like something inside me was breaking. Trying to hide my turmoil, I told her there was nothing in particular, and she just said, "I see," and went to her room. From then on, Emily and I began to drift apart. With a new subordinate, Emily's overtime increased, and the time we used to go home together changed significantly. Thinking she must be tired, I would cook and wait for her, but as soon as she got home, she would complain, "You haven't cleaned up the dishes," and point out where I hadn't washed properly or left dirt. At work, I saw less of her, and at home, the atmosphere was awkward, making me feel quite down. During those days, I heard something from Tyler, a colleague in the same sales department. He mentioned that Emily and David, our boss, used to be in a relationship. I shrugged it off at the time, but on my way home from work, I vividly remembered Tyler's trivial story. As I approached the busy downtown area on my way home, I saw something. Emily was walking side by side with David in the downtown area, just the two of them. Seeing them walk together, my mind went blank. That scene etched in my mind, and something inside me that had been barely holding on shattered. I don't remember how I got home. When I realized it, I was at home, sitting blankly on the sofa. My head was a mess, and the image of Emily and David walking together kept flashing back, making me cry and rush to the bathroom to throw up. For the next few days, I thought a lot, but couldn't find an answer. Maybe my heart was tired from the days of drifting apart from Emily. On my next day off, I made up my mind. Emily was working, and it was just my day off. I thought it was a convenient timing and acted on it. At 10 p.m., Emily came home. I was waiting in the living room, and as soon as she entered, I blurted out, "You were with David today, weren't you?" As soon as David's name was mentioned, Emily was lost for words and froze. Her expression seemed to say, "How did you know?" Seeing her face, I couldn't bear it anymore. "I've filled out my part." With those words, I left a green piece of paper on the living room table. It was a divorce oath, but only my signature. At that moment, Emily was saying something, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to see the woman I admired and loved making excuses. I grabbed my few packed belongings and rushed out of the house. I ran towards the station for a while. Looking back, Emily wasn't following me. That only fueled my despair further. All I could think of was that I didn't want to go home that night. I found myself dejected, standing alone in the station's rotary. Then, someone placed a hand on my shoulder. "Hey, Michael, what are you doing here?" When I looked up, there was Brandon, my colleague from the same year I joined. Brandon, on his way home from work, found me sitting alone at the rotary and, concerned, came over to talk to me. Seeing Brandon's serious look, usually so laid back, I embarrassingly broke down in tears in front of him. After I cried for a while, Brandon, realizing this was no small matter, said, "Come stay at my place tonight," and put me into a taxi. The taxi ride took about 10 minutes to reach Brandon's apartment, where he lives alone. After preparing a simple dinner, Brandon handed me a beer and asked what had happened. A bit calmed by the alcohol, I told him everything, and Brandon, after thinking for a moment, said with a kind smile, "For now, I'll take care of things tomorrow, so you just rest." Just like he did at the rotary, Brandon patted my shoulder and prepared a bed for me, saying, "Go to bed and relax." I felt Brandon was like a different person from his usual self at that moment. The next day, I called in sick and stayed at Brandon's place. Brandon was up early, preparing something, and only said I could do as I pleased at home before he left. In the afternoon, I remembered my phone. When I took it out of my bag, it was filled with missed calls and texts from Emily. I was hesitant to look, but I noticed that the history stopped abruptly that morning. As I was thinking that Emily must be meeting with David at work, coordinating their stories like my husband found out, my phone in hand vibrated slightly. Surprised, I looked at the screen to find a text from Emily. "Are you free tonight?" It was the same line she used when she first invited me out for drinks. I wasn't sure if it was nostalgia or a desire to settle things with Emily, but I felt the urge to meet her. We agreed to meet at the station after her work, as she would finish on time. I was still in the disheveled clothes I had left home in. As I headed to the meeting station, Emily spotted me and immediately rushed over. Her face looked worried and relieved to see me. Unsure what to say, I was pondering when Emily apologized. "I'm sorry." Seeing her continue to apologize, I was at a loss for what to do. As I stood dumbfounded, I heard a voice from the station, "Hey." Looking in the direction of the voice, there was Brandon, walking towards us with his usual nonchalant expression. "Don't worry, Michael, your wife isn't cheating on you." I was even more stunned. How could Brandon be so sure? My confusion must have shown because Brandon explained the truth. Emily hadn't been cheating with David. While it was true they had dated in the past, Emily had broken up with him due to his possessiveness. With David being assigned overseas around that time, he had left, not accepting the breakup. Emily had focused on her work, and their relationship was supposed to have ended. However, David had never accepted their breakup. When he returned to America and found out Emily was dating me, he used his authority as a supervisor to falsely report and remove me as Emily's subordinate, involving her in his work. The rumors that Emily has a bad history with men spread by David were meant to break us up. Emily herself was also misled when I was removed from being her subordinate. David had lied to her, saying, "Michael seems fed up with your methods," suggesting mutual dissatisfaction to justify the change in our working relationship. But why did Brandon know all this? When I asked, Brandon answered with a proud look, "Because I'm in HR." When I expressed my surprise, as I had never heard this before, Brandon nonchalantly apologized, saying he had kept it a secret. Brandon had been transferred to HR, tasked with internal investigations into misconduct and attitudes towards work across various departments. He had been monitoring for harassment, such as power abuse and sexual harassment, by supervisors. David's actions had been suspicious for a while, and his return from overseas was partly to gloss over troubles with interpersonal relationships there. Brandon then informed me that HR was currently dealing firmly with David and left us. Left alone were Emily and I. Realizing how I had been misled by my assumptions and manipulated by David, I knew I had to apologize to Emily. "I'm sorry, Emily. If we had talked more properly, this wouldn't have happened. It's partly my fault too. I was pushing you too hard," Emily said. She seemed to realize that her behavior at home had been wrong. Her treatment of me as a child stemmed from her inexperience in dating a younger man. She didn't know how to interact properly. Whenever she tried to act more mature, it backfired. While she appreciated my attempts to help and support her, she often pointed out my shortcomings and struggled to be honest. Emily apologized. Then, Emily and I had dinner together anew. Of course, it was at the home we shared. When we returned home after shopping for dinner, our awkwardness made us laugh just by looking at each other. The next day, when Emily and I went to work together, the situation had surprisingly settled down. Apparently, David had been suspended due to the trouble he caused overseas and his recent abuse of power. Soon, an official report would be released by HR, demoting him and reassigning him to a regional branch, Brandon nonchalantly mentioned while eating lunch. David had also been spectacularly dumped by Sarah and was now working quietly alone in a regional office. Brandon's role in resolving this issue was recognized, and since he had originally expressed a desire to gain experience through an overseas assignment, he was promoted to the branch where David had been stationed. "I'll do my best abroad as a single man, so you make sure to keep your wife happy," Brandon said with his usual charm, waving goodbye as he left for his overseas journey. Emily and I are cherishing our time together anew. We're increasing the time we spend together, making up for the time we missed, and Emily is trying hard to avoid treating me like a child. We're doing housework together. She praises and supports me where I do well, and we're experimenting with various ways to improve our time together. Our work is also going well, and we're now stepping forward to build happiness together, truly understanding each other's hearts.